Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to Speed Tips by Bob and Chad, episode number 70. Seems like it just doesn't seem like we've done 70 episodes. I mean, it's kind of went by pretty quickly, and I was pretty impressed when I seen when you said episode 70. I'm thinking, God, we've done this quite a bit. So this
Yeah.
is pretty exciting. Nice to see all of you guys out there, and we're all ready for questions and whatever we can do to help. What's new and exciting at Weir's Machine, Chad?
Well, fresh off a trip down to Springfield to the Midwest Speed Expo. That was a good weekend down there. Great to see the people down in UMP land there, and had a good time. We debuted our new Ultra Force. Our manuals now have the move to start function. So we dropped that Facebook video last week, and the new manual with that move to start is really an awesome machine. You can store four corners, center to centers in there, and automatically go to the position you want to go to, and then set the load, and then hit the unload button, and it takes the pressure off the assembly, so you can go right to the car. So that was a huge step for manual machines. We had to raise the price just a little bit to get that automation in there, but they went up $200 to 4,000 from 3,800. So, but it's definitely worth the $200 if you've ever used a machine and know how big of a pain in the butt it is to bump that switch and try and get as close as you can. So we're excited about that. Working
Awesome.
on getting the catalog done. So hopefully we'll get that thing in the mail next week. We've had a lot of issues with the file there. So if you need a catalog, or if you're not on our mailing list or never ordered from us, shoot us an email and we'll get you a catalog out here in a week or two.
Awesome. Well, that sounds good. Well, I was talking to a customer today about that new load machine, and I told him, I said, well, I'm not totally sure what the price is going to be, but I'm pretty sure Chad said somewhere around 4,000. So I'm glad I hit that on the head. I'm totally confident he's going to buy one. I don't know if he's going to buy it direct through you or buy it through us or whatever. I'm not totally sure, but he's definitely going to get one. I would assume he's probably going to get that here in the next couple months, the way he sounded. So that's exciting. And I told him it had a lot of new features to it, and that it was a pretty cool machine. So glad I halfway knew what I was talking about there.
Yeah.
Man, we had a busy day today. Swear to God, today was like the Monday after Daytona 500 or something. I was just totally amazed at how the phone rang nonstop, and it was kind of to the point where by the end of the day, everybody looked like they'd been run through a ringer. It was pretty intense, but they shipped out a lot of packages, so Austin did a great job.
Cool.
Okay, let's see. Dan Patch. This car won. The car that won two of the B feature or B mod A features at Lovato had looked like a 60-pound chunk of lead strapped underneath the slung bar on the left rear, as how they could mount it. Also, the right front tied down. Your thoughts? Well, I'd have to say if he won a couple races, it must not be too bad. That's a pretty good indication that he's got, stuff going on. I don't know if I really have an opinion. I mean, that right front tie down, that's getting that's yeah. I mean, we're seeing that in stock cars and B mods, really locking that front end down. You can run the car a little bit tighter that way and still have it turn. The adage used to be that we were concerned about the fact that if we tied the front end down, it would hurt traction off, which it's still in certain racetracks, it will hurt traction off. But anything that's got momentum or anything that's got speed to it, man, you up your corner speed so much that what you might lose off the corner, you pick up so much more speed in the middle of the corner that you don't notice what you're losing off the corner. Now, a stop and go type of deal, yeah, that tie down right front maybe might be a little bit more difficult to have, but we're seeing it. Like I said, we've seen it a lot. Like a racetrack like Boone, that works pretty good. In places like that, that's got speed, works pretty well. Luke, how much positive rear spring table do you recommend for an IMCA Northern Sport mod? Well, we've always tried to run right around an inch. I don't think I would run more than 2 inches, but in that inch to 2 inch mark, I think is a pretty good starting point. Keep in mind, sometimes we get the spring table a little bit confused in the fact that when we're running a real soft left rear spring, that springs compress so much that in a static situation, that spring table looks all out of whack. But the problem, the way that setup works, the second you even apply any throttle whatsoever, that left rear jumps up, and to the point where in your spring table is your left rear's already over top of your right rear, and it's making that car work a lot better. So when you enter the corner, that's still going to be that case. What's your thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Okay, so
Are you there?
hang on, I'm going to lose this again. I might have to have you read the question above the one I can't. Aaron is the first question I can see.
So Tim, you don't see Tim then?
Nope.
What is the recommendation for rear percent on a sport mod, and is it with the driver or without? You disappeared again. Host left. Host joined. Welcome back.
Okay, I'm back again. I don't know what's going on. Jeez. What a day.
Episode 70, we should have this figured out by now, Bob.
Well, you would think so. And I even restarted the computer and it did everything like I normally would. Okay, Tim, what's your recommendation for rear percentage on a sport mod? And is that with the driver or without the driver? All my recommendations are with the driver. And as a norm, our theories with the average 200-pound driver. Granted, in today's world, the average 200-pound driver is probably 215 pounds. But that being said, with an open motor, probably in that 57% range. With a crate motor, probably 56%. I know some guys with the open motors that run as much as 58%. You got to be a little careful with rear percentage, depending on where you're racing and if it's a stop and go type racetrack versus a momentum type racetrack. A momentum racetrack, you want to run a little bit less rear percentage. A stop and go type track, you probably a little higher rear percentage. But as a rule of thumb, like I said, a crate motor around 56%, open motor in that 57%. Okay, Larry says he is sending in a new line pull bar in for rebuild next week to you guys. What makes the better than others? Well, once again, there's a lot of good pull bars on the market. I like the way the new line pull bar is built from the fact that it really loads the right front when you get off the throttle and keeps the car, it helps stick the right front. And I feel it's got pretty good traction with the stages of the biscuits and all that type of stuff. Chad's got a pull bar that, in my opinion, is probably equal to what ours is. So, for me to give you a real big sales spiel, Bobby's the one to talk to on the sales part of it because he was in on the development part of that pull bar. I just know it works pretty good, and we sell quite a few of them. So um, I've been pretty pleased with it. I mean, the racers that have it seem to be very pleased with it. So that kind of gives you my spiel. Aaron, on watching some of your shows, I'm going to switch from a 20-inch 100-pound spring to a 16-inch. Is there a need to go up on spring rate on the 16-inch? What about an 18-inch if anyone makes one? UMP car. Thanks for the help, fellas. Um, well, I'm not. I'm glad you're switching from that 20-inch. I'm not a huge fan on that 20-inch. The 18-inch spring, I can't actually tell you who makes one of those. I don't not no one to my knowledge. Maybe IBOC makes something like that I don't know about, but um, as far as I know, I don't think anybody is. I know there's some 15s out there and there's 16s, but I don't know anything about an 18-inch. Going up on rate, you might want to go to a 125, but with your left rear the way it is, run that 16-inch 100-pound spring. I mean, a 100-pound spring is a 100-pound spring, whether it's a 16-inch or a 20-inch. So it's going to compress and load the same. Uh, Everything should be the same. So I probably wouldn't change rates. Um, right side stuff, I tend to change rates. I go stiffer if I go shorter, but the left side, we haven't really done that. And like I said, we run our standard setup is a 100 or a 125 left rear on our modified program. On rear 4-bar suspension, how much bar toe is ideal? You talked about that a couple of weeks ago, Chad.
So on a 4-link car, the left rear, we always talk about it as the car is sitting there scaled at ride height. So the left side bars will be pretty straight as you're looking at them. The right side lower bar will be pretty straight also, but the right top one is probably the one that gets the most. Uh, as you roll that car over, that right one goes through a lot of motion. So that one we want to point the front of that in at the front. So when the car rolls and that straightens out, it's pointed straight. If you start it straight, it's going to point at the right side door. So always remember that all of your arms, when throttle's applied, whatever direction we're facing, that's kind of the direction we're going. So that's how you play with the bar toe, and the angles give you grip. So how it's kind of plants the car. But the biggest thing is you want it to not bind up. So I would start there and then I'd run the car through motion. So do the old poor man's pull down rig, pop the right front spring out, compress the right rear, jack the left rear up, make sure you can spin all your 4-link rods, when you're in dynamic, and make sure that none of them heims are bound up. If they're bound up, I would make a bar toe adjustment to get them to where they're not, bound through that motion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Garrett wants to know about when the app is going to be released.
I just texted the software engineer before we went live because I figured somebody would be asking, and it's driving me Absolutely insane. I'm a little bit disappointed in myself for talking about it too early there. Well, I mean, we were ready to pull the trigger, but then you guys brought up the question about having multiple users in the data so that you got a crew guy, you got a tire guy, you got a crew chief, you got a driver. And, it sure made a lot of sense once we had a meeting and talked about it after. I don't remember which one of our viewers was the first one to ask about that, but it kind of seemed like we had a couple people ask, so I felt like it was pretty important. I called a couple people the next day, and I feel like it's a good decision to get this done right the first time. So it's driving me nuts because it's taken some time for them guys to get it handled, but they told me early February, so hopefully the first week in February. But sorry about the delay, but I feel like it's going to be a much better system to be able to have your whole team look at it and then make adjustments and then see what's going on. So hopefully we got another update in 2 weeks when we go live again. I assume we're going in 2 weeks again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Well, and if everything works out, then maybe we'll have it in time for the 4-link school coming up February 3rd and 4th. There's still some open spots for that if anybody's interested. It's going to be an excellent school. We've got some great speakers. Of course, Chad's going to be there. Ben Baker's going to be there. Riley Hatfield from El Dorado Speed Shop's going to be there. My son Bobby will be there talking about shocks. And Jake McBurney will be our driver on the panel to give his opinion as far as how the driver relates to the changes that the crew chief wants to do. So be an excellent school. So feel free, like I said, if you guys have that opening, it'll be a good weekend. First weekend in February at BHE. Sean says, Chad, on a 3-link Shaw setup, right rear spring on top of the housing, would you recommend a swivel cup at the top via a weight jack or a swivel cup on the axle housing on the bottom?
Well, if it's a sport mod, it's illegal if it's a sport mod. So I don't know if you're IMCA or what you're racing. If you're not and you're an open mod, I would run the swivel cup on the top on the screw jack, just like you said, not on the axle. You have to pick the top or the bottom. You can't run a swivel on both, otherwise the spring will pop and bow, and that won't work either. So only one bearing cup, and I would recommend the top, unless it's a sport mod.
Right. Dylan, seen on a very popular stock car chassis, left front shock mounted with spacers to mount it up and down. Is that IMCA legal? Well, I'm not saying that I'd be the best person to answer that question because I sometimes on those rules I tend to wait to find out if it isn't. I don't no idea. I couldn't answer that question. We'd have to actually go through the IMCA book or call Dave Brennan at IMCA and ask him. That would be your best bet on that, Dylan, because I'd hate to tell you an answer which I really have no clue about. Give Paul Berger a call tomorrow up there at B&B. Paul would definitely know if it's legal or not. And maybe somebody that's listening here would pop in and tell us if it's legal or not, because I'm not really sure. Scott, IMCA Northern Sport Mod, would you recommend a 13-inch left rear and an 11-inch right rear spring? No, I would run the two 13s on the Sport Mod with the drop cup on the right rear would be my choice. I think that works out pretty good. The 11-inch spring is a little finicky. There's not a whole lot of travel there. And I don't know, it just seems like there's just not enough spring to make the car respond like I think it should sometimes. The 11-inch spring tends to make the car very tight. gives it very, of course, it makes the spring table real low on the right side, so it sticks to the right side quite a bit faster. To me, now there's guys that are running it. I'm not saying it's not worth trying, but from my experiences, I still would run the two 13-inch springs with the Wehrs drop cup on the right rear. How much left rear do you think a factory stock needs using a metric frame? Well, kind of depends on, you're sort of stuck with your left side weight, and depending on what you can actually do, because the factory stocks, a lot of those factory stocks, you can't have a weight jack bolt in there, and you can't, so you got to do a bunch of fidgety things that are technically can be illegal if you got caught doing them. But 150 pounds of left rear bike would be what I would suggest. That OEM rear suspension seems to like that 150 to 200 pound range. I don't know what you can run for springs in your factory stock as far as the rules go, but if I could, I would run a soft left rear spring that's taller, like a 16-inch left rear spring. But most of the factory stocks, you have to run the actual factory stock springs, so you'd have to check your rules. Cody, make sure to buy Wehrs made in USA, not a copy knockoff brand. There are some copies of some stuff. You got to be proud of that, Chad. People think you're doing an excellent job, so they try to copy that stuff. That stuff used to really piss me off, but anymore, it's kind of like, well, it's flattery, I guess.
Imitation is the highest form of flattery.
It
We don't really
is.
pay attention. We don't pay too much attention to the competition. We just listen to our team and our people and do what we do.
Well, you got enough to do that way, let alone worry about what everybody else is doing. You got, there's not enough hours in the day to worry about what yourself's doing anymore. I mean, it just seems like as busy as everybody is, you don't have time.
Definitely not made in China, though.
Yes. Gage, first year in IMC hobby stock, any setup tips? The biggest setup tip I could give you, Gage, is come to our hobby stock car school. It's the weekend after the Daytona 500. I think it's the 24th and 25th. That is the best money you can spend, especially if it's your first year in a hobby stock, going through and sitting through that class for 2 days. You will learn so much, and there's so many tips that you'll have, and you'll go home with a big notebook full of information. And I can't stress enough that would be my setup tip to tell you, Gage, because of course there's so many setup tips. We've got a guy that works for me. He runs a sport mod now, but he ran a hobby stock for a few years, so he's kind of our resident hobby stock expert. His name is Brayton. If you've got any questions or anything about hobby stock type stuff, he'd be the one to give us a call at BHE. But I'd highly recommend that school. I can't stress that enough. That we've got veterans that come to that school year after year just because it kind of refreshes their memory of things. And each school, even though our format for the school is pretty much the same, and a lot of our information is very similar, it's still you always pick up things that you missed the time before. So I can't stress that enough. Cody says, Gage, if the radiator cap fits, the rest of the car will. There you go. And Chris says, as long as it's welded when you set. Got it. We got some good guys on here tonight helping us out.
Yep.
Mark, tell me about the left rear brake floater attached to the cage or not. Single or double shear. Where's cage already on the car? A mid. You're going to lose me again for a split second, so go ahead.
So the brake floater, when you're running the arms separate, obviously that's a little bit less influential than when you clamp the brake portion to the cage. It's when you clamp it to the cage, you're going through the 4-link rods, and then you're also influencing the spring and the slider or spring and shock if you're coilover behind. So it gets the car up faster and it gets on the right front a little bit harder. So it's a little bit more effective than the brake floater arm. You can definitely influence the brake floater to act a little bit more like that with more angle and lowering the arm down on the axle side of it. So I would recommend like a shorter track is where you would be clamped to the suspension cage. And then on a big sweeping track, you'd probably want to go back to the brake floater. And we kind of learned that almost by accident. We were running, 2 different tracks, and we made that housing the first time where we put the brake on the cage, and it was a one-piece housing, and we couldn't go back and forth. So we were really good at the tight short tracks, and when we got to the big sweeping corner track, we were terrible, and we were just plowing the right front. And that's kind of when we developed the split cage there. Darren Duffy was running the brake on the cage, and he was going to, I can't remember now if it was really good at Marshalltown and it was terrible at Vinton. But anyway, short track would be, you want to get turned in a hurry, so on the cage would be really good. And a big sweeping track would be back to the brake floater. It's one of them things where if you're going to run it all the time, you almost kind of got to retrain yourself how to brake and not use as much pressure, when you're on a big sweeping track, so you don't bury the right front. But it's a little bit more tunable when you have it on the brake floater. When you're on the cage, it is what it is, because you don't ever want to change your upper 4-link rod angle. So that would be the main determining factor. The only way to calm it down then is to take upper bar angle away, and you really don't want to touch that once you get the car set. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
Let's see here. Dylan, that's what I thought too. Must not be an IMCA car or just haha pictures. LOL. Had like 3 spacers to be able to adjust it. Travis, who's going to be on your panel for the stock car class? What's the benefits of switching to a 62-inch rear end on the stock cars? Okay, the first question is we're going to have Mike Nichols is going to be one of our panelists. Paul Berger from B&B Chassis will be one of our panelists. Troy Jarovitz will be one of our panelists. Troy's a good stock car racer, so that he'll give us a part of the driving part of it. And my son Bobby will be part of the panelists for shock absorbers and that type of stuff. And he's worked quite a bit with the stock car guys this year, so he's got quite a bit of stock car knowledge. And the 62-inch rear end, moving that left rear out seems to give the car a little bit more traction up off the corner. So we've had good luck with that 62-inch rear end. Some guys haven't liked it. I know. I know Paul Berger says that some of his customers weren't real happy with it. But the cars that we worked with last year all had that in it, and I've been pretty pleased with the performance of the car with that in it. Any information on the new style right front Swift spring? Sorry, Bill, I have I'm not knowledgeable about the Swift products. I have no knowledge to be able to actually give you any idea. We sell Eibach, Hypercoil, and Landrum, And that's about the only three brands that I can give you any actual information. We don't sell the Swift products. Anthony says, thanks, Chad. Got some homework to do. Sean wants to know what apps we were talking about. He missed that last show.
So we've developed an app that we're trying to get launched, but it's basically your race team at the palm of your hand. So it'll be on your phone or an iPad. It'll handle all your maintenance, your measurements, your parts list, your race day notes, your setup book. You can set up multiple cars in there, so the guys that run a stock car and a modified can put multiple classes and multiple chassis builders, however you want to do that, but you can build as many cars in there as you want. It has a trackside tuning feature, so you click if you have a late model and you're loose sand, and it tells you recommended adjustments. So just kind of an all-in-one collaboration of, the last year, me and Bob and 3-4 of our friends talking about what to do and how to do it, and trying to make the ultimate one-stop knowledge center for your race team in the palm of your hand.
Larry wants to know, how much angle in the pull bar do you recommend? Also, pull bar center of the car or more to the left of the chassis? Depends on what motor you're running. If you're running more of an open motor, maybe to the left's not such a bad idea. 15 degrees is what I've always.
We lost him again. 15 degrees is a pretty good starting point. Left to right, you would probably want to start centered and then tune accordingly. When you move it to the left, it's more traction, and when you move it to the right, it takes traction away. So if you have it to the right, you're going to rotate on the fuel. When you have it to the left, you're going to be tighter. One of the things that we look at is dynamically, whichever, like I said earlier, with that bar, whichever way the bars are pointed. Same for the pull bar. So when your pull bar, the front of it is pointed towards the right front, and you decel, it's going to drive the right front into the track harder than, if it was pointed towards the left front. So that's one thing that you can tune there. Angle. So the more angle is instant traction. So shorter track, more angle, longer track, less angle. Less angle carries it farther down the straightaway. That's about it with that. Bob must not be hitting the right buttons tonight. Not sure where he went this time. One thing with the pull bars, we talked earlier about his bar, my bar. I mean, there's a lot to be had for what you feel. So I say it's mostly driver feel on the rate of it. You're gonna have more. You'll gain more by location than you do rate usually. But the spring bars seem to be doing really good. So his combo spring bar, my combo spring bar, they kind of made a comeback and have been pretty solid. Not sure if we're going to get Bob back or not. I assume you guys can still hear me. Maybe the whole thing's gone. Sean says we're 3-link, but I'm not sure. Oh, so yeah, the app doesn't matter. Inside the app there's a place to build late model, modified, B mod, and stock car. So a lot of options there, and just a big knowledge center for your race team. Keep going. You can still hear me. Okay, perfect. Not sure where he's at. Some of these are more up his alley. So right rear spring rates on a Northern Sport Mod. I'm not much of a Sport Mod expert, but I'm guessing 250 is what Bob would say. Scott, we have both sides on 13-inch springs. What was that about the spring table? Yeah, so the spring table, having them both the same and doing it with the cup. The biggest thing is when you change them springs, if you have a 16 and a 13 and a drop cup, you're going to have a lot of spring tables. So too much spring table tends to have that car flop over and really influence that right side. And when you overpower that right side spring, then it gets into kind of a loose tail, so you got to be careful with the spring table. If it gets too much motion, you're going to need more spring right there to hold the car up. What, do you keep hitting the wrong button or what?
Well, it's when I take this arrow and go down, it doesn't like that. It locks the computer up. So what's causing that? I have no idea. But it has to do with these questions. Okay, I probably missed some questions, but I'm just going to go with this one, and we'll have to come back the next time.
I rambled through a couple of them. I handled the pole bar one, and the 3-link Sean was a 3-link. Right rear spring rates, I wasn't sure. Northern Sport Mod, I said 250.
I tend to go with a 225 most of the time, a 13-inch spring. If we go with an 11-inch spring, we'll probably run that 250, but the 13-inch springs, the 225 seems to be. And there's something to do with the Be Live program that's just not. Because like I said, I even started fresh. I restarted.
Maybe I should just read the questions tonight. Oh, poor Bob. Adam says, hey, Bob and Chad, thanks for all your info and help. See you Friday morning, Bob. Thanks, Adam. I know he's excited about this weekend. It's sold out, another sold out class. It will be live, so if you're 2-link and you're thinking about going, you can still watch it online. You want me to read the questions so you stop hitting that button?
That might be a good idea. What
you can arrow up and down with your arrow keys to move that also instead of going over there with your mouse. At least you can on my side.
I can too, unless it locks up. We'll try it with that. Okay. Did you do the one with Dean where the recommendation for the right front spring?
No. Right front spring cup? Nope, I didn't get that far.
Right. Yeah, the right front spring cup.
Adam was thanking us for that, and I was telling him that he's coming Friday morning. So I said that you were excited for Friday, and if you wanted to still sign up, you could watch online.
Yep, it's if you're interested in the sign up for the class, if you want to watch it online, you can sign up online. It's racetechinfo.tv, and we got our own website now for the racetechinfo.tv. We're like the big time guys now, man.
Maybe we should put Bob and Chad on that.
Yeah, well, yeah. This
does that platform work for this?
This Be Live program is not doing good tonight. Gage wants to know how much the class is. It's $3.99, and you can go to the RTI site and it tells you all about it and get signed up. Rob says she will be tight on corner entry. Yeah, that's true.
We do need to go back to that spring cup.
Oh, yeah.
Dean in the right front spring cup. I'd run a drop cup in the right front and a standard top bearing in the left front. I'm pretty sure you agree with that.
Yeah, that's what the cars all go out of the shop with that. That works really well. I like that drop cup because it just lowers the spring table in the front just like we're trying to do in the back, so it gets the car over on the right front. And that works really well. Cutter wants to know what's the opinion on a tie down on the right front and left front with the cowboyed up spring. Well, we've got some guys out there that are running. It would be a tie down in yesterday's world. It's like a 5-8, something to that effect, just to give you a general idea on the left front, and then a pretty stiff tie down on the right front. We run the majority of our modifieds, sport mod or modified, we run a pair of 500s. If you're having a little bit of problem with corner entry where you need to be a little bit tighter on corner entry, stiffening that left front spring definitely helps. And with stiffening that left front spring, I would definitely probably go a little stiffer on rebound to compensate for that stiffer spring. That works pretty well. Southern Sport Mod. Yeah, Southern Sport Mod, that would definitely work well. Okay. Lonnie, an IMCA stock car, when using 16-inch left rear and 13-inch right rear, do you still recommend the drop cup on the right rear? You would not need to have the drop cup on the right rear when you're running a 16 and a 13-inch spring, because your springs are going to do what we're wanting to do there. The drop cup works best when you have to run equal length springs, or when you want to run equal length springs. Like with the IMCA Sport Mod, we can't run anything taller than a 13-inch spring, so we kind of almost have to have that drop cup. And IBOC, and I did find out that IBOC does make a 12-inch spring. I was going to actually get some of those ordered, and I haven't actually done that yet, because with the Sport Mods, that 12-inch spring would be ideal. How far would you guys say is too soft for a stock car right front? I know some guys that are running as soft as an 800 on the right front. Boy, that's a pretty heavy car for that soft a spring. What they're doing, they're coil binding that spring. I think in certain conditions that might be okay, but for normal conditions, I'd still be in that 900 to 1,000 range myself. Bump. How far would you guys? What do you suppose he means by bump?
Yeah, I asked if they could hear me. I think they were just saying keep going, and that they could hear me.
Okay. Hey, Chad, left rear chain limiter. I run a UMP. Is there any way you could make a spring like you have, but add the adjustment like we use on the left front?
Well, I mean, on the left front, we use the same. Or I don't know if you're talking about the quick pin style versus a can style.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what he's talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have guys that you can bolt the quick pin style to the top of the 291 can if you want to. We've done that for a lot of guys. Otherwise, the 91 and 92 cans are threaded, so it's easy adjust. You break the jam nut loose and then screw the can apart however far you want to go. That's a fairly quick adjustment, but you can take the 269 quick pin adjusters and bolt them right to the top of the 291 can to get the quick adjust on a 291 limiter can if you want to have that.
Anthony, what spring rate would you recommend for a pull bar? Well, it kind of depends on what pull bar you're running. Like, as an example, our pull bar, but it has its two-stage biscuits and stuff in it. So our spring rate's only 500 pounds. I think, what is yours, Chad? 700? No, yours is
We build all the progressive 600 2000, and we offer it in the hypercoil IBOC and AFCO versions. So
that would be to be honest, that's probably the spring that I would run in a standard uh, type pull bar. Like I said, ours is a little bit different because of the staging. So, but yeah, that when we had the AFCO pull bars, that was a spring we ran very well. I know one of our Wasota customers won a lot of races on a spring like that. Um, Mod lights will not be on that application. The app that Chad's talking about, if I'm not mistaken, has B mods, sport mods, stock cars, late models, and modifieds.
mod light coming in the future.
Okay.
We would just need a chassis builder's insight on how to tune them babies. I'm sure it's a little bit different than what we do. So it's definitely something that, as we evolve the app, like we evolve any product, there's going to be additions to it. So obviously we've got some midget guys already talking about it. Mod light. My asphalt buddies are mad because I don't have asphalt lay model in there, and so there'll be definitely more coming. We focused on the first four. I think between the first four with the adjustments, what do we have? Like, I don't know, 65 pages of stuff, Bob, or what?
Yeah.
So,
whoa.
It's an evolution just like everything. So we picked obviously the bigger popular classes first, but I'll put the mod light definitely on the list of things to do. I got a couple guys that we're making parts for, so definitely an option we can get going in the future.
Okay, Southern Sport Mod. Is there an advantage to running softer rear trailing arm bushings on the left side versus the right side? Um, to be honest with you, uh, I think you're opening a can of worms when you do that. And here's the reason why. Because when you run softer on one side, then the softer ones are going to wear out sooner. So, you don't know just exactly when they wear out. And then it's hard to tune because you got an inconsistency between the biscuits. Um, like on our stock car stuff, we run stock OEM bushings. We get them from Arnold Motor Supply. It they work real well. They're consistent, and I know there's some guys out there that are running some trick bushings and stuff, but we've not found that it's actually been needed. So, Brandon, we have a Wehrs 404 on our left rear and right rear stock car. We would benefit going to the drop cup on the right rear, or would it would it have much been on the swivel things?
So if you're going to run the 404 cup on the left rear, not swivel, and the swivel cup on the right rear, I don't think it'll be a huge difference. I would always run a swivel cup if you have the opportunity to run the swivel cup, and I would always run OD grab with the Torrington bearing if you have that option available. So your left rear cup isn't necessarily terrible. I mean, I would put the bearing in there, and that'll work probably just fine. If you want to convert that to a bearing cup too, that would work. And I know it doesn't. We haven't had this question in a while, but why would you run a bearing cup and the Torrington bearing? But the 5-inch bearings displace the load. The center bearing just does the articulation of the angles. So that's why I would run both. If you're going to run the same height springs, I would run that drop cup in the right rear. If you got your spring packages are all, like a 16-13 or whatever, then I probably wouldn't put the drop cup in like we talked earlier on that sport mod application. So again, getting too much spring table is going to over influence the right rear and overpower the spring and going to eventually turn into a skate. So you can have too much spring table in the car and too much motion.
Trent wants to know about hobby stock springs and shocks. I tell you what, once again, I'd highly recommend giving BHE a call tomorrow and talk to uh, Braden about that. He can definitely get you dialed in on the springs and all that. The hobby stock, as far as I'm understanding, the they run like an 1,100-pound left front and a 1,300-pound right front, and rears a 175 and a 150. The shock absorbers, you'd need to actually be. I couldn't actually tell you what the shock absorbers on those hobby stocks are. I'm assuming they're very similar to our stock car stuff, but give those guys a call tomorrow. They can definitely tune you in a whole lot better than I can, because I just don't remember what they told me about the hobby stock stuff. So I apologize for that. Larry says I must be on AOL dialed in. Well, I tell you, trust me, I was thinking that myself there for a while. I'm like, what the heck? We went through, I think we went through two classes here, or two Bob and Chads where we didn't have any problems. So why not tonight? What the heck? Brad, I'll be coming down to the school on Friday as well. I'll be there Thursday night. Where would you recommend going out to eat? We're staying at the Best Western and coming from Green Bay. Well, we've got a lot of places that are really good to eat.
Hickory Park.
If you like barbecue type stuff, Hickory Park, which is on Duff Avenue, I think it is. Hickory Park is very, very affordable, and you get plenty to eat. That works really well. We've got a Texas Roadhouse. That's a nice place to eat. That works pretty good. Those would probably be my two recommendations for where you're staying. The Hickory Park, though, that's good food. Nice environment too. Do you guys run a metric chassis? Well, Sean, the only metric chassis we run is our stock cars, and I'm much more versed with the Chevelle stuff because that's what our modifieds are. But our metric chassis is what we run our stock cars. Jim says the BHE pull bar is great. No issues with traction ever. Well, thanks, Jim. Thank you. So run the pin adjuster above the spring.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't run a spring in my limiter. My own opinion there, but on a limit chain, when you're pulling on the limit chain and you're going down the straightaway and it's extended and you're pulling on that springs store more energy, just like the pull bar. The springs store more energy. So when you let out of the fuel and you relax that chain, it's going to try and pull the car down. That's why we like to run, the foam, the pucks like you would run in the pull bars, the neoprene style stuff. The springs, we generally don't like to run those on the left rear limiter, because when you let out of the fuel, pulls the left rear of the car down, car instantly wants to go right. So not a huge fan of that. I would maybe recommend looking at a foam or a neoprene bushing there, which we have, and we can put in whatever can you have. So it would just be a quick little adjustment there to change that out if you want to try it.
Jake, when running stock mount front shocks, what durometer upper bushings would you suggest? Boy, Jake, I couldn't actually tell you the durometer of the upper bushings. I can sure durometer some tomorrow and try to let you know, but I have no idea. The puck that's right, I have your puck, not spring.
Perfect. Good to go.
All right, we got 5 more minutes before we're all done for the day. Once again, want to make sure, remind everybody about the 4-link school that's coming up. Like I said, that it's going to be an excellent class, and the stock car school, definitely going to be an excellent class. Great speakers for both classes. Going to be a lot of information, a lot of fun. That's why we've got Riley, Ben, Chad, because Bob and Bobby aren't that much fun, but those 3 guys are quite a bit of fun.
Oh,
People don't always get my humor, so Chad's been through enough classes that he picks up on it fairly quick now. Chad, what mod-like parts are you making?
we're working on a climber style pinion mount.
Awesome. Gallagher, Jake Knapp Stock. Cutter. What's the name of the app Chad's talking about?
It's called Circle Track app. So it's the Facebook is live, website's coming, app's coming. If you follow the Facebook page, then you'll know immediately when it's ready to be released.
And once that's all done, once again, the amount of work that Chad and those guys have put into that deal is phenomenal. But it's a phenomenal product. I mean, it's definitely, once it's available, it's going to be a must-have. I mean, there's so much information. Like I've told some of my customers, they need it. It's going to be $99. That's still the price.
Yes, sir.
It's going to be $99. And even if you don't, well, I don't know if you'd use all the stuff that's in that app, because there's so many things in there that just putting data in there. And like I tell those guys, I said, when you have a question, you can pull up your phone and click right there, and it's slick. I mean, it's the best product of that type I have seen. And I try to keep up with some of that stuff, not as much as I used to, but I try to keep up with it. So it's going to be a pretty good deal. Justin, the class this week, I can't make and can't stream. Do you work? Can I purchase the class to watch later? You can purchase the class on the stream, yeah. Racetechinfo.tv. You can purchase the class. And the advantage of buying either one of the stock car or sport mod or the modified class, you get that for 365 days. You get to go back and you can rewatch it and rewatch it and rewatch it as many times as you want to. So it's really a good deal from that perspective. The only thing that the class doesn't offer online that it is in person is some of the questions and some of the interaction between some of the panelists with the students and stuff like that. Some of that stuff is not as easy on the class, but otherwise you get the same book, everything you get that everybody else would get, and it's a pretty slick deal. And like I said, the big advantage is you can watch it as many times as you want. You can go back and review sections. It's a pretty neat deal. Brady, how applicable is the information for the modified Chevelle stubs to the metric modified cars? It's pretty applicable. The only thing I would say is the spring base in the front's a little bit narrower, and the A-frame, the metric A-frame, the spring is in a little different location than what it is on the Chevelle A-frame. So you're going to probably end up running a little stiffer front springs in a metric car than you would on the Chevelle car. Like I said, our modifieds, we run a pair of 500s in there, where that metric, you might run a pair of 600s in there, just because, or a pair of 550s. It's just a little bit narrower And that's the only big difference. Well, it's 8 o'clock. We appreciate you guys listening. We'll be back here to see you here. And let's see, today is the 16th. So we'll be back to see you on the 30th. And stay tuned for more information. Thanks again. We appreciate all you guys chiming in. We had a great class tonight, or a great class tonight. I was very impressed with all the questions, and so it's pretty good.
Awesome.
All right, Chad. We'll see you later. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.